Welcome to Purpose 360. I'm Carol Cohn.
And I'm Chris Noble.
And we're on a journey to explore the brightest and most innovative minds and initiatives in social purpose.
Today, companies and brands must stand for something meaningful. They have to have a social purpose and bring that purpose forward to their employees, their customers, and their community.
Each episode, we're talking to leaders at Fortune 100 companies, global brands, social enterprise startups, NGOs, and everything in between.
We'll be taking a deep dive to learn how they are integrating purpose into their organizations
to benefit both business and society for enduring impact. Join us. Welcome to Purpose 360, and I am so excited today because I have one of my favorite people in the world that's joining us, Paul Lindley. And Paul has a very interesting background. He's a CPA by training. He was with KPMG for 5 years. Then he moved on to Nickelodeon in the UK, where he was a deputy managing director, and he was there for about 9 years. And then he left to start Ella's Kitchen. Today, now the UK's largest organic baby food company. And Paul's going to share with us his journey because he is an entrepreneur that built a company with purpose at the center. So many of our interviews are about how you take purpose and how you convince your colleagues at a company to join in, to bring their capabilities and their resources. That wasn't the case with Paul. Paul started it at the very beginning. He's also a big supporter of the B Corp movement, and Ella's is a B Corp. He also has other interests now that he's sold Ella's, and we're going to talk about that. So, Paul, welcome to the show, and I'm just so thrilled to have you.
Hi, Carol. Thank you so much. You've certainly done your research there. I didn't recognize myself for a minute, but all true. It must mean I'm getting too old.
Oh, no. Because at your heart, you understand all of the learnings from a toddler. And we're going to talk about your book a little bit called Little Wins, The Huge Power of Thinking Like a Toddler. You'll never forget that great creativity. But I'm just curious, you grew up in Zambia. You took the accounting track. How does someone mesh all of these wonderful education and curiosity to become the founder of the UK's largest organic baby food company?
Yeah, I ask myself that sometimes. I don't know. I've been blessed and cursed with having both the sort of maths and logical and sort of that side of the brain way of looking at life, but also a creative way. And so I've ebbed and flowed between creativity and between sort of numbers and logic and the business side of things. And that's really helped me make the best use of my skills when I became an entrepreneur, which was in my mid-30s. But until that point, I'd either done CPA stuff, which was very right side of the brain.
Okay, so let's talk about that moment when you were sitting in your kitchen and Ella was very young. And where did that germ of the idea for Ella's Kitchen come from?
Well, that's right. The whole company is named after my daughter, and I think so much of success in life is due to adapting and building on your own experiences. I'd got to a point in my life where, as you said, it was a CPA, so I was very strong and comfortable with business plans, but I had an idea. I'd worked for Nickelodeon for a long time. I'd seen that brand being a fantastic advocate for children first, and I had also come across a lot of the statistics and the information around how our children are getting less healthy by generation every single year because and it was seen that television was being blamed for it. So sitting at Nickelodeon, I got a whole insight into kids' health, kids' development, and I sort of put a few things together. I'd got a business experience. I'd built a brand at Nickelodeon in the UK. I had an idea of building a food brand that, like Nickelodeon, was all kids first, but for a parent's point of view, was healthy, organic, nothing added, and helped the weaning process. And I was at a time of life where I thought, if I don't do this, I could regret watching somebody else do something similar, and that would be a lot worse than trying and failing. And so I wrote my resignation letter from Nickelodeon. I took a deep breath and I plowed in to create Ella's Kitchen. So that was it, really. It was seeing my daughter, having the experience of my daughter and her weaning journey for the first couple of years of her life, coupled with the professional experience I had at Nickelodeon of how to build a brand where you put children right at the heart of it, put them first, and build everything around them. So Ella's Kitchen, biggest baby food company in the UK and in 40 countries around the world. It's got a great footprint in the United States, but that all stemmed from this desire to improve children's health by developing healthier relationships with food that we felt our brand could do. And that became the mission of the company. That became the reason I wrote that resignation letter. And the trick then was to create a sustainable business that could use its profits to help make that change and improve those children's lives.
And it's fascinating that it wasn't just about selling baby food. It was something much larger. You were very clear about your purpose from the beginning. And I love that in your book, Little Wins, you talk about your son, Patty, and you were trying to name your first product, or what was the first product? And he said, the red one, red like my fire engine. Can you tell us about that story?
Well, really, it's a great example of how we should listen to both children and our inner child in our head, I think. And it's the premise of my book, but it's the true story behind Ella's Kitchen. Kids have really great ideas. You know, kids, toddlers age between 3 and 5 or 6, have this view of life that is full of imagination, full of self-confidence, full of free thinking and honesty and ambition and determination. I argue that we should grow down more to think like that again. And I give in my book some examples of businesses that have grown directly because of children's thinking. And I can talk about the Mr. Men books, which came from a child's idea. I can talk about Polaroid cameras, which came from another child's idea. And I can talk about Ella's Kitchen and the way that we named our very first product, the red one, because a 4-year-old little boy, my son, that's what he automatically pointed to when I asked him which his favorite was. And that little bit of insight meant that we called it that. It became our bestseller. It's still our bestseller. And it really resonates, really true in business terms, thinking about your consumer first and listening to them. But in a much wider sense, it's that joy I feel and the little boy inside of me that says, yes, we should, that innocence and that free thinking and imagination that children have can be so relevant to the way we find solutions to the problems in business, in our personal lives, and much bigger in society. The solutions are there. We choose to conform. We choose to play by the rules too much and do things because the person before us did them just like that. And children don't think like that at all. So that's the kind of allegory around why naming the product the red one, because a 4-year-old boy, my son, called it that, really works.
You have taken fun and innovation and delight to the highest levels. From your packaging, it's so colorful, it's squeezy packs, to your advocacy, your Veg for Victory with Xander and the BBC News, and we're going to put a link to so many of your videos on our website, so people can really see the 360 degrees of Paul Lindley and Ella's Kitchen. But can you talk about the importance of not only the advocacy and why that helps to build a purpose brand, but also the branding of it, because they're all intertwined?
Yeah, I can. And perhaps best to explain that by broadening it about a little bit about and why I started my own business is because I had an idea that I thought society could benefit from. In that I found a way that I thought children could eat better, therefore be healthier, therefore be happier, therefore contribute to our society better as adults, and kind of win-win. That's and when you think about it, that comes down to me as to why we exist, to improve the world for our children. Now, if you take any business then in that context, the point of business must be to improve society. The point of anyone buying anything from any business, whether it's a cup of coffee or whether it's a big airliner or whatever, then people only buy because they think it's going to improve their life. The heart of business is people, it's not money. That's my fundamental belief. And understanding what motivates people to invest in you or to work for you or to buy from you is the trick to a successful business. Of course, and with my CPA hat, I would think of this, you need to have a sustainable business model. But business models, any action plan, are delivered by people. And if you're an investor, you look at the business plan and you think, okay, that's a business plan, that could work. Are these the people that can make it work? When you apply for a job in a company, you must be thinking, yes, there's a salary there, but I'm spending 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day with these people at this company, delivering a mission and a purpose that may hopefully overlap with my own vision in life. I want to enjoy myself. I want to be at this work. And your question was really about brand, Ella's Kitchen as a brand, but I'm sort of saying any brand starts from the inside and works out. You can't just say, okay, we're going to say to the external world, we're going to do an advert, we're going to try and persuade people who want to buy from us that we stand for this, this, and this, and it will improve their lives by this, this, and this, and therefore they should buy it. We've got to live that. It's not authentic. It won't work unless we're living those values and that brand value internally in our culture and in the environment that we work in. And therefore, that's all to do with people. So building a business with a people-centered approach, the money follows that, and you get trust, and you can build prosperity, and you can do good with that prosperity.
We certainly understand that the employee today is so important. They're your life's blood. So thank you for really focusing on that. Advocacy is also part of the success of Ella's. Can you talk a little bit about Veg for Victory and averting a recipe for disaster, and why it's important to create an ecosystem around the product and your purpose?
Yeah. And the short answer is that one word, trust. It builds trust. One, it's the right thing to do, and secondly, it builds trust. If we are true to our vision and mission of improving children's lives by developing healthy relationships with food, we can take a very narrow view of that and say, okay, we can create great products that will ask people to pay for. And we can take a wider view and say we can create great products, people will pay for them, we'll make some profits, and with those profits we can reach other people who can't or don't have the opportunity to buy our products, and we can make a bigger impact. And that's where advocacy comes in. We have got the trust of our consumers, we've got the credibility of our position in the industry and in families' lives to be trusted. And I believe we, as businesses like that, have a responsibility then to act and to use that credibility for good. And I think it's morally that's the right thing you've got to do if you want a better society. But I also think it's in the economic best interest of brands that can show that they are fulfilling their mission and their purpose by something that's wider than just selling their products or services.
And so you, Paul, you created the greener paper that you presented to the NHS. Can you talk about that?
I want to put it in the context that, I founded Ella's Kitchen, extremely proud of that. I ran it for 8 years. I was chairman for 4 years, and I stood back, and I'm not involved in the company at all for the last 6 months. So when I say we, I'm not technically involved in the business anymore. My heart is. My my head and and any sort of contractual relationship isn't. But what I'm so relieved and grateful and proud of is that the vision that I had for the company has flowed through with successor as CEO and the management team now. I think it's the easiest to explain by saying our mission is to improve children's lives and develop healthy relationships with food. We can easily do that with the products that we create and sell and make a margin on and make profits from. Then what do? Then, as we built that credibility that we had opportunities to use the insight and the research and the trust that we had to nudge our government in the United Kingdom, to judge our food industry as a leader within the industry, to get some of our competitors and our colleagues to go with us to try and push for changes through things like bringing together roundtables of experts to create a report called Averting a Recipe for Disaster, which we I took to the UK politicians, had it discussed in the House of Commons, had it discussed extensively in the press in the UK, and had some of its ideas, which were recommendations for all of society, government, big government, small government, the food industry, parents, children themselves, as to how we can avert the recipe for disaster, which was in the UK, if nothing else changes, by 2050, half of the children born now will be overweight or obese, and that is a serious has serious consequences for our society and our economy. We followed that up by taking some of those recommendations and implementing them as pilots in one city in the UK, Leicester, where we said, look, these are our theory ideas. Now we're putting them into practice. There is a relatively small amount of budget we've put in as a relatively small company. Government, now you can see what the impact of this has been, and you can scale this across our country. And there's 2 or 3 things that the political parties in the UK adopted in their manifestos from recent general elections on the results of some of the things that we could amplify through the pilot that we did. You talked about Veg for Victory. Our experience in commissioning research, but in commissioning a review of all existing research for the last 20 or 30 years, looked at how children are introduced to vegetables when they first start weaning. And, without getting technical, there's a golden opportunity between 6 months and 1 year where all children babies at that age will accept anything food that they've given eventually. So it's persistence from parents that are needed with vegetables to get their kids to want to eat them. But once they do, they'll have a lifetime of eating them, and they have much less chance of becoming fussy eaters. So we did a whole campaign, including our own products for just vegetables products for babies, of which nobody else did, only vegetables ones. But we also went to our government, again in the UK, and the National Health Service that we've got, and tried to persuade them to change their guidance for weaning through our health service to promote vegetables earlier in life.
My name is Xander Van, reporting live for BBC News. Here I am opposite the Houses of Parliament in London. It seems the city has been taken over by delicious vegetables. Little ones are taking ginormous building blocks made out of all sorts of scrawny veggies to government, and they say veg first. The little ones want to give something to the very important people at the Department of Health. It's Ella's Kitchen's greener paper, and it's all about giving little ones lots of yummy vegetables during weaning. Stay right there. I'm going to investigate to find out more.
We've got we did that privately and sort of one-to-one with decision makers, but we also did it publicly with our consumers through products, but also through the touch points that we have. For example, our Veg for Victory campaign on YouTube and through social media reached millions of people. And there's some very clever and funny videos around Winston Churchill, or Winston Churchill, as we called him in our videos, and his famous speeches, which we sold a serious message with fun and humour to over 1 million people.
Winners of the free world, tea time is upon us, and I say nothing but veg. Not just today or tomorrow, but for a whole 2 weeks. And when our tummies are full, the nation will say, this was their finest tea time. Veg for victory.
Yeah, I mean, you're creative, and I just urge listeners to watch these videos. I love it when you're being interviewed by Xander, who's how old, 6 or 7, and you've got a broccoli as your microphone, and you go veg first, veg frequently, veg and variety, which I think is, and Weinstein Churchill hysterical. So the creative is fantastic. So the company grew; it doubled and tripled in sales every year. What was the impetus to seek a sale? And eventually, that was Hanes Celestial in 2013. That's a very intimate decision for an entrepreneur.
Yes, and a very risky one, and one that you could regret the rest of your life, or the one that could be the thing that changes your life. And for me, it came about, funny enough, through our business in the United States. We did extremely well in the UK. We've done extremely well in Europe, the mainland Europe, and we were courted by some of the major retailers in the United States to come and set up an operation in the US. And we did that, and we grew. The US, obviously a huge market, obviously a complicated market in size, logistics, legislation, and highly entrepreneurial and fast moving. So we found that we were in a competitive situation with others that had been inspired by what we were doing, had their own ideas, and were growing very fast with significant investment behind them. We began to think, that these guys, our competitors, are fully focused on the US. We are dedicated to the US and had set up a whole company and production and infrastructure and were US based, but we had operations in the rest of the world. And as a very small company, not taking an eye off the US market when our competitors had 2 eyes on the US market became something that I began to think a lot about. And I thought we need a US, a big partner to be able to compete. And that's fundamentally why I sold the company. I sought somebody that could protect our US market, that could add to the opportunities we have to further scale our businesses, but crucially, that thought about the world in the same way and could protect the mission and build and scale the mission as well as the profits within the company. And I found that within Hanes Celestial.
And for our listeners who may be at that size where they need that next jump, how did you pick Hanes Celestial? And more so, how did you know that they would respect your values and character and mission? Isn't there a story that I read about, looking across the table and looking, I don't know who's negotiating it, in the eye and really having a sense? I don't know if that was Erwin.
I think, as we went through the whole process around sale, I liken it a little bit to a horse race with jumps in it. And I felt as though there were 3 jumps that we had to do in this race, and take them in order that were all around the word value. So first of all, it wasn't the value of the company. That was the second jump. The first was the values of which the acquirers we were speaking to had and stood by and had evidence that they, that's what they really believed in. Did any of the potential acquirers overlap with the way we see the world and how our business could use its position to be a force for good and to improve children's lives and their relationship with food? And Hanes Celestial came through that. It's an entrepreneurial company. It's built brands that have a purpose. Earth's Best was in its stable, which had a not dissimilar story from Ella's Kitchen, and had been with them for a good 10 years by the time we were speaking to them, and had been successful yet kept its mission. So, values, I would recommend anybody who wants to sell a business and ensure that its legacy stays or wants to be involved in some way, values first. Second hurdle was value. Obviously, we were very proud that we built a business. We felt it had a value, and we wanted to ensure that we were paid that value that we'd helped create. And the third hurdle then was added value. What would the business that acquires us add value? How would they do that? Yes, to the bottom line by economies of scale and new markets and new ideas and access to sort of assets that we didn't have before. But also, how would they add value to our culture and our purpose and the impact that we could create that wasn't necessarily defined in dollars and cents, but it was defined in improving families' lives. And they were the three jumps then, really, values, value, and added value, that by the time I felt we'd jumped those three hurdles in our process, Hain Celestial was the business that I felt most comfortable, that really got us, would do all the things that I'd hoped Ella's could ultimately achieve with a partner. And very happily, over 5 years ago now, became part of the Hain Celestial Group.
And the sales of the company, I've read that they are almost 200 million around the globe recently.
Yeah, they're over $100 million. They're somewhere between those two numbers, continuing to grow every year. Certainly in the UK, going from a startup, on my kitchen table, trying to get our first listing, to within 7 years, the biggest, not just organic baby food, but baby food business in the UK. So the UK, which has about 66 million people, we have a 36% market share, something like that, of all baby food sold. And it's in 40 countries around the world. It's got 4 best-selling cookbooks, which again is a revenue stream. Yes, it's a branding. It's an ambassador for our brand. But fundamentally, we decided to do cookbooks, which is around scratch cooking, which is sort of kind of competitive with. You may think of it as competitive to selling pre-prepared baby food. We honestly believe that having an interaction with food, knowing where it comes from, how it's prepared, being involved in the process, will make children more susceptible to trying new foods. And therefore, we felt that we should write cookbooks that had fun recipes, that involved games and things with the kids as they wrote shopping lists, visited the store, did some of the cooking, and were proud to show what they could make with healthy recipes that created from scratch foods, and not worry about, well, my goodness, if they're doing that and they're not buying our products.
Yeah, your view of having, just not being about selling product, but truly about the entire category and education is just marvelous, and it's a very forward thinking attribute for a leader. I have to again point our viewers to the videos you have online. The weaning videos are hysterical, because some of the babies, and I'm sure this is true, they have more food around their face and on their bibs. I know one of your parents said, you got to have bibs, a lot of bibs. And you had men and women and such. Those are just priceless. And so they're just terrific. Paul, I'd love to turn to your book, Little Wins, The Huge Power of Thinking Like a Toddler. And, you say in the book, toddlers see the world differently, act on their instincts, and pursue their goals with rigor and determination. Can you give us some insights? Why did you write the book? And what can adults, what can we learn by growing down versus growing up?
Well, as I grew, Ella's, and I was increasingly asked to speak more publicly and be asked questions by people around what advice would be, or what the secret of why we were successful, I found myself over the years answering with, you've got to be creative and think of new things, or you've got to be honest to yourself, and all the different things, tenacity, have confidence in yourself, all of the classic things that people tell entrepreneurs to do. I began to overlap them or realize what I was saying was the things I was seeing through our consumers when they came in and tried our food, or when we worked with the close families that we worked with in trying to understand how we could better serve them. And I began to suddenly say, well, actually, the way you can build your best business is to think like a toddler, because when we develop a new product, we extensively test it with young children, and they don't mess around in terms of telling you whether they like it or not. If they don't like it, it will be thrown on the floor and up the walls. And if they love it, they will literally shake with excitement and have it all around their mouths and in their mouths and really demand for more. And so I just took inspiration from children. Now, then I began to think, you know what? I think I'm grey-haired and I'm in my 50s, and I'm seen by some as this business person. Yet what I feel in myself is no different than I felt like when I was a young child, and the wonder I have when I see something new, and the wonder I saw in my own children's eyes when they were little. And I began to listen to their questions and look at the way they interacted with each other and saw the world. And I thought, my goodness, I'm glad I got a little bit of that. I think it's what helped create Ella's Kitchen and made it different, but I wish I had more. So my book really says we were all the best version of ourselves that we were ever is when we were 3, 4, and 5 years old. When we were at that age, we had just learned how to smile and to walk and to talk and to play. And we'd learned a whole load of skills in that very short 2 or 3 year period, from being a baby that cries and can't move to being an articulate toddler who can ask questions about how the world is and why it is, can run around and explore the world, and can learn so much every single day, and take nothing for granted or the rules for granted. And it all sort of envelops in a creativity that they have that I think we're sorely lacking in our world now. I take a lot of inspiration in the book from the person that's given the most ever watched TED Talk, which is a British guy called Sir Ken Robinson, whose TED Talk was Do Schools Kill Creativity? And other research that he's done shows that when you take a 3 or 4 or 5 year old, they can fundamentally think divergently, and that's how they think. That's how they get through their days, thinking divergently, moving from concentrating on one thing to another, to another, to another. And it is literally a measure of creativity. Now, 98% of us, when we were 3, 4, or 5, thought divergently, and therefore we're creative in our day-to-day lives. By the time we get to 25 years old, only 2% of the population thinks divergently day to day, and therefore creatively. So only 2% of us are using creativity at 25, and I'm sure it gets less as the older you get. Yet 98% of us were creative when we were 5. So the world has lost creativity from 96% of the population. And I just feel as if instead of 2% of us retaining that creativity, if 4% of us could, that will double the amount of creativity in the world, the number of ideas in the world, the number of businesses that can create prosperity, the number of solutions that we can have to the social and environmental problems that we've got. And it doesn't seem that hard if we could change the way we parent and educate in our corporate system was for only 96% of us to lose creativity rather than 98% of us.
I just love that. And I would suggest this book to anybody. I love Built to Last, but I'm going to put this one by Collins, but I'm going to put this one right next to that. And I love as one of your endorsements. It's from Lord Hastings, who's just amazing. He's global head of citizenship at KPMG. And he says, in an uncertain and fast changing world, little wins can show why the timeless simplicity of a young child's perspective can transform the way we live and work. A compelling case for innovation. And as companies today are just looking for the newest ideas and ways to innovate, growing down is a marvelous and kind of, counter way to thinking only the adults have the answers. You talked about B Corp, and there's a really funny but simple video on the website that talks about B Corps with pictures of bees, and it's very literal. Can you just briefly share, why Ella's became a B Corp, why the B Corp movement is important today?
Yeah, I'll start with kind of what a B Corp is, and it's a pioneering company who really is seeking to change the definition of what success is in business. It is a business that has taken a stance and changed its constitution, changed its articles of association and its constitution documents to move away from its point is the primacy of shareholder returns and maximizing shareholder returns, to saying, no, our point is to optimize stakeholder returns. We have as much responsibility to the environment and to people as we do to profit. They are all equally important to us. We want to build a business that creates profit, but not at the expense of people or the environment. And the movement launched in the last decade. There are over 2,000 B corporations in existence now. Ella's Kitchen's really proud to be one of the first in the UK. Joins a band of variety of different companies, from very small entrepreneurially led, completely mission focused companies to very established, huge companies like Danone and Unilever, public companies that have found a way to register and accredit their subsidiaries, and in some cases the overall organization to be a B corporation. That I can see from the growth of B Corps across the world. I can see from the growth of other mission-led businesses that they're successful. I know in the UK, where the food industry grows by half a percentage point a year, B corporations are growing by 14%, and that's the same. And it's not these tiny companies that are growing. It's big companies like Unilever Brands and like Danone itself. So, I think, I spoke a little bit earlier about the evolution of capitalism. I think it is happening because the young generation that are coming through, that are the key employees, the key innovators and entrepreneurs, and already the majority of consumers around the world, and the consumer purchasing power that they are demanding that from the companies, that they act in a way that is responsible, is sustainable, and lives with the values that generation has.
Terrific. So as we unfortunately have to wind this down, what's next for Paul Lindley? I know that you've left Hain Celestial. You had the role of chairman for Ella's, and you're doing some really exciting things. So I'd love you, for our listeners, to tell them, what is your purpose, and then what are you doing what's next for you?
I talked a lot about having a mission for a business and having a purpose for a business, and I've self-reflected about, well, what is my personal one, and I've just got this belief that we can build communities and businesses and societies that are richer in opportunity, in compassion, and in ideas, and that's when I kind of work that out. We've got the capacity as people to increase the opportunities for other people, the compassion for other people, and the ideas that we can generate to improve our world. And I thought this can fundamentally happen through business, which is the only mechanism that we've got to create prosperity that can pay for some of these ideas. So I gave myself the opportunity to free my time and my thinking and up to get involved in a wider number of things than just the business that I created. So now I'm trying to do those things through social businesses and social enterprises. So, for example, I'm an investor. I'm on the board of a business called Toast Ale, which is craft beer, fantastic, delicious craft beer. But in each bottle, there is a slice of a fresh surplus bread. And the whole ethos of the company is that we've got a food waste problem in this world, that the majority of that food waste is it comes from bread that's not eaten. 44% of the bread that's baked in the United States today will not be eaten. It will be thrown away. So if we can get that bread before it's thrown away, while it's still fresh, and we can take it and make beer from it, and recycle it into the supply chain again. And then if we can take all the profits from the business that we've created by adding the value of a great product, giving the value of great employment and love and learning and legacy leaving of the employees, and we can make profits, we dedicate those profits back to a charity that addresses food waste. And we've even found a unique way of encouraging investors to invest for good with something called Equity for Good that we've got, where investors pledge that all the upside that they get from their investment that they will dedicate to good, whether that's in social impact investing or charity giving. It's up to them, but we have scaled our first series of investment around people that want to invest that way. So that's in business. I'm also a trustee and on the board of Sesame Workshop, which is an iconic 50 years old next year media company, obviously, that is right at the heart of American childhood and increasingly around the world childhood. And then out of business, I've tried to use business principles and entrepreneurial principles, risk-taking, creativity, thinking like a toddler, and not in the box. In areas like I chair London's Child Obesity Task Force, which the Mayor of London appointed me to look at ways where we can address this really significant problem in the UK and in London specifically, where 40% of our young people are either overweight or obese already. And it's highly poverty skewed. And what can we do about the environment in London that we can change? And part of it will be encouraging entrepreneurs to come in with healthier businesses that serve healthier options, or use technology in a way that can help people live their lives more healthy, as well as changing infrastructure and advertising opportunities and things to nudge our society to a healthier lifestyle. I'm using entrepreneurial skills there. So I have a varied life, but I fundamentally believe that individuals can make differences, that we can make little ripples all over the place, and when a few ripples come together, they start to create a wave, and waves can, break down the status quo and bring great change. I believe, as I've said already through my book, Little Wins, that the ideas that we need to make the changes that we have to create a better society are already there. It's finding them. It's for having the courage to see them through. The future is already here. With one of my heroes, Professor Muhammad Yunus, is one of the founders of social enterprise. He's got a great quote about the future is already here. It's just hidden. That there will be an idea somewhere in the world today that, if by design or chance gets found, it can quickly be used to scale change, whether that's impact change for individual people's lives, or it's monetary change in scaling a business. Most ideas are already there, and Silicon Valley is great proof of how in a generation little ideas can become world leading businesses and fundamentally change the way we operate as people.
So you're doing so many rich things, and I know that Ella's will always be in your heart. Your daughter now, Ella, is what, 17?
She's 19.
Is that about
She's 19.
She's 19. Okay. And I'm sure that you're going to want, there's another cone when I sold Cone. So I always, encourage them to do the best research, because my name's out there all the time. So I certainly understand. In closing, Paul, where can people get more information?
Well, if they're interested in and the things I'm involved with and why I'm involved with them and the impact of them that those things are making, then I have a website which is paullindley.uk. When I look back, one of the most singularly changing few minutes of my life was when I came across a marriage certificate for my great-great-grandparents who were married just over 100 years before I was born. And I was so pleased to find this. And I found they were farmers and they were in a rural part of England, and I got their names and how old they were. And then I saw how they signed their marriage certificate with X's, because neither of them could read or write, just 100 years before I was born. And I just thought, what opportunities did they miss out from? What ideas did they never get to seed in their brains, or if they did, to see through because they couldn't communicate or read or learn? How many jobs didn't they find because they couldn't find a way to find that job that they loved? And I look at myself, I can see their children. I've seen photographs of their children who look like me, their sons that look like me. And I just so clearly can relate to the fact that I've just lucked out in being born at the right time and taken the opportunities that I had. And how many other people around the world are prevented for whatever reason from maximizing the opportunities that they had? And that's such a loss for individual lives, but it's a massive loss for our countries and our societies and the communities that we live in. And so what drives me every day is kind of climbing new mountains and not believing that the repository of ideas in the world is limited. It is unlimited. We don't. What is limited is our time and our ability, and therefore our focus. And if we can each pick things to focus on, dedicate our time to it, we'll enrich our own lives. We'll enrich the society that we live in, and we can do that through business and business principles in other areas. And that's what I get out of bed for every day, that optimism that we're not done yet, and that an idea that I hear today, I can encourage people to amplify, and it may be the thing that changes the way that our societies live.
Well, that's fantastic. And perhaps by growing down and using thinking to be like they were a toddler, that's one great way to come up with amazing ideas. I have to say, I'm going to thank you so much for this interview. I always had Paul Pullman and I had Howard Schultz at the top of my list as purpose-driven leaders. And now I just like to say that you are right there, up there with them, Paul. I so encourage our listeners to really spend time on your website, read your book, check out Ella's, all the incredible branding that was done, the great go-to-market strategies, because Paul Lindley is certainly one of our great, purpose-driven leaders. And I know that we're all going to hear in probably 1, 2, or 3 years, your next Ella's and your next great contribution. So thank you very much. And I'd like to end and ask everyone listening, what is your purpose?